Daniel had never imagined that stepping onto the wide landing field of the alien world would feel so overwhelming. The air itself carried scents unlike anything he had known before, sharp fragrances of minerals blended with something sweet and earthy. The sky was washed with two suns, and the ground shimmered under their light. He had come as part of a peace mission between humans and the native people of this place, and he was determined to do his part. He was young but steady in his ways, his eyes always searching, his steps careful as he adjusted to the strange terrain. Settlements stretched ahead like a mixture of natural growth and crafted design, great towers that looked like carved stone yet pulsed faintly with energy, vines woven into walls that breathed and shifted with the wind. Everything alive, everything connected in ways Daniel's human mind struggled to understand. His companions moved ahead, talking among themselves, but Daniel hung back just a little, observing quietly, because he always believed that the best way to learn was to watch before speaking. It was then that he noticed her. She stood slightly apart from the rest of her people, tall, graceful, her skin carrying a pale shimmer that caught the sun's. Her hair flowed like a stream of night across her shoulders. Her movements were deliberate, almost like a dance. She was watching the humans with eyes that carried both curiosity and something sharper. Maybe judgment, maybe interest. Daniel could not tell. All he knew was that he could not look away. The people around them were welcoming enough, offering gestures of peace, their words translated through devices. But even as they spoke, Daniel noticed how often their eyes flicked toward her, the woman who stood so calmly as though she already knew something they did not. When the introductions were done and the groups began mingling, she moved forward, closing the space between herself and Daniel without hesitation. The others seemed to pause, as though expecting something, yet Daniel had no idea what that might be. She stopped just before him, her gaze holding his with a weight he could feel in his chest. She raised her hand slowly, and Daniel stiffened, unsure if he should step back or hold still. Her hand brushed across his shoulder, then his neck, and finally she pressed her palm gently against his chest, right above his heart. The touch was warm, delicate, yet confident, and before he could speak, she leaned closer, so close he felt her breath. Then she rubbed her cheek lightly against his skin near his jaw, a motion so sudden and strange he froze in surprise. Faint fragrance spread around him, richer than the air he had first smelled on this world, something sweet but strong, something that clung not just to him but seemed to sink into his senses. When she drew back, he saw a faint glow upon her skin, and the way her people were staring. Silence spread across the crowd, humans shifting uncomfortably, aliens murmuring among themselves, but none daring to interrupt. Daniel looked around, bewildered, then back at her, her expression calm and sure, as though she had done something completely natural. Daniel opened his mouth to ask what was happening, but his fellow human Marcus hissed a warning at him under his breath. Careful, she has marked you. Daniel frowned. Marked me? What do you mean? Marcus did not answer fully, only glanced at the alien woman, and then at the others who were beginning to whisper more loudly. Daniel could see their faces, some amused, some shocked, some even hostile. Though they tried to hide it, he felt the weight of every stare pressing against him. The woman stepped back half a pace, yet she did not look ashamed or uncertain. Her chin lifted, her eyes locked on Daniel's as if daring him to deny her act. Daniel felt his pulse quicken. He did not know this custom. He did not know this meaning, but clearly it was powerful. His instincts told him he had just been placed in the center of something far larger than he could understand. He was not just a guest here anymore. He was suddenly bound to this woman in a way her people recognized deeply. He remembered training sessions back on Earth about cultural misunderstandings, the stories of soldiers who insulted entire clans by a wrong gesture, or explorers who nearly caused wars with careless words. Daniel had thought himself careful. He had sworn to stay alert, yet nothing in his lessons had prepared him for this. No handbook had said what it meant for an alien woman to press her cheek to your skin and leave her scent on youth. Murmurs grew into words translated faintly through the devices. He caught fragments, claimed taken, bonded whispers running through the alien crowd while the humans shifted uneasily. Daniel's commander looked tense but gave no order, perhaps knowing it was too late to undo whatever had been set in motion. Daniel swallowed hard, his thoughts racing. Should he object? Should he step back? Should he demand explanation? But something inside him froze his body, unable to reject the warmth of her touch lingering on his skin. Alien woman finally spoke, her voice low yet clear, carrying easily across the open space. Her language smooth, but the device translated her words into human speech for all to hear. She said, "He is mine." Her tone had no hesitation, no question, only certainty. Daniel felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders like a mantle. He had not asked for the others, gasped some in disapproval, some in awe, but no one challenged her declaration. Not yet. Daniel's thoughts tumbled over themselves. Was this some sort of joke? Was it a mistake? Could he convince her to undo it? But when his eyes met hers again, he saw no hint of doubt. She had chosen him deliberately, and whatever this act meant to her people, it was irreversible, at least in their eyes. The scent clung to him, undeniable proof of her decision. By the time the crowd began to disperse, leaving whispers behind, Daniel felt his chest tighten, not from fear alone, but from the realization that his life had just shifted in one instant. He was no longer just Daniel the visitor, he had become Daniel the marked, and nothing would ever be the same again. Daniel spent the rest of that first evening with a heaviness in his chest. He did not understand everything, but he could feel the tension in the way both groups acted around him. The other humans spoke to him only in brief moments, careful glances exchanged behind his back, as though he had stepped into dangerous territory without realizing it. The aliens moved with an air of respect, but also distance. No one came close, not after what had happened in the square earlier when she had pressed her son upon him. Lyra, that was the name he had overheard from their voices. She carried herself with the same calm poise as before, as though nothing unusual had occurred. She walked among her people as if she had simply chosen something that was hers and expected the world to accept it. Daniel followed at a distance, not sure if he was meant to walk near her or far behind. Part of him wanted to confront her, to demand an explanation, but something about her steady gaze kept him silent, as if she would not bend even if he shouted. When they returned to the quarters provided for the humans, the commander called a private meeting. Daniel entered the small chamber, where a faint glow lit the stone walls. The commander stood with arms crossed, and Marcus sat on the edge of the bench looking uneasy. The commander spoke in a sharp, low voice. "Do you understand what she did to you?" Daniel shook his head. "No, I have no idea. All I know is she touched me, and now everyone looks at me like I am wearing chains." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes wide. "It is more than chains, Daniel. She marked you like her mate. Their kind does not do this lightly. When one of them leaves their scent, it is for life." The words landed like stones in Daniel's stomach. Life. The thought of it felt impossible. He barely knew her. He barely understood her people. He had come here for diplomacy, not for bonds, not for this. The commander's voice softened slightly but stayed firm. "We cannot interfere in their traditions. If you refuse her, it could cause offense. If you accept it, you may lose the trust of your own kind. We walk a thin line, and you are in the middle." Daniel. That night, Daniel lay on his bed staring at the living walls that shifted faintly with light patterns. He tried to sleep, but the fragrance clung to him, still sweet, sharp, impossible to ignore. His mind spun with questions. Why had she chosen him? Why not someone else? Why him at all? He was not a leader, not a figure of power, just a soldier with a careful eye and steady hand. Yet she had looked at him as if she had seen something hidden inside him, something worth claiming. The next morning brought no peace when Daniel stepped outside. The alien settlement was alive with motion, children playing near the glowing roots of trees, merchants setting their goods along woven streets, warriors training in the distance. Yet wherever he went, eyes followed him. Whispers rose and fell, some approving, some resentful. He caught the word taken again and again, like a song that haunted the air. When he tried to speak with the locals, they either smiled too knowingly or withdrew too quickly. None treated him like an ordinary guest anymore. It was during a walk through the marketplace that trouble found him. A tall alien male with markings across his shoulders, stepped into his path, eyes burning with anger, his voice deep and edged with contempt. "You do not deserve her," he said. Daniel stiffened, unsure how to respond. The device at his side translated the words, and people nearby turned their heads. The male continued, "She was meant for one of us, not for an offworlder. She lowered herself by touching you." Daniel wanted to protest that it had not been his choice, but his throat dried. The crowd leaned closer, tension rising. Lyra appeared, then moving with silent grace, she placed herself between Daniel and the angry male, her gaze cutting sharp as a blade. She said, "He is mine," in her language. The translation echoed after her words. The crowd shifted, murmurs spread. The male bristled, his shoulders rising, but he did not challenge her directly. After a long pause, he turned away, his expression twisted. In frustration, Daniel stood frozen as she looked back at him, her eyes unreadable yet steady. She did not explain herself. She did not ask if he was comfortable. She simply accepted the bond as real and expected the world to do the same. Daniel's heart raced, not from fear of her, but from the weight of it all. He felt like a man carried along by a river, too strong to fight later. When he returned to the human quarters, Marcus caught him by the arm, his face tight with worry. "Daniel, you need to decide what you are going to do about this. You cannot drift forever. If you accept her, then you become part of their people. If you resist, you may start a conflict." Daniel's voice rose, frustration breaking through. "I did not ask for this, Marcus. I never wanted to be marked." Marcus shook his head sadly. "Maybe you did not ask, but she did not choose you by accident. Their kind sees more than we do. She must have seen something in you." Words lingered in Daniel's mind long after Marcus left him alone again. Maybe she had seen something, maybe there was a reason, but he could not grasp it yet. As the suns lowered and the alien sky turned deep violet, he watched the towers glowing in the twilight. Lyra stood at the edge of the square, her figure outlined in light. She turned her head slightly as if aware of his gaze, and for a moment he felt a strange pull, not fear, not resentment, but something else, a threat he could not name. The night settled heavy, and Daniel realized his world had already shifted. The question was no longer whether the bond existed. The question was whether he would fight against it, or learn what it truly meant. The days that followed became a storm of attention around Daniel. Everywhere he walked, eyes followed. Whispers trailed behind him, some voices filled with wonder, others with jealousy. The humans in his group began treating him with distance, not openly hostile but cautious, as though he carried a burden that might spill onto them at any moment. Daniel felt the gap widening between himself and his own people, and yet strangely, he began to feel a pull toward the alien settlement that had once seemed so foreign. Lyra was always near, not in a way that smothered him, but in a way that reminded him constantly of the bond she had placed on him. She moved with the same calm assurance as before, and wherever she went, others stepped aside, granting her space, and when she chose to stand beside Daniel, no one dared to interrupt. She did not speak often to him, but when she did, her words were steady, her tone warm yet firm. She guided him gently through customs, explaining gestures, showing him the rhythm of their life, and he found himself listening more closely than he expected. One evening, Daniel followed her into a hall woven from roots and glowing strands of light. Inside, he found elders of her people gathered. They looked at him with eyes both curious and cautious. One of them spoke through a translator, saying, "The bond has been made, but now it must be proven." Daniel frowned, not understanding. The elder continued, "In our way, a bond is not only words or sense. It is tested through time, through loyalty, through strength. Others may challenge if they believe it false." Daniel felt the weight of those words settle heavily on him. The idea that others could question what he had not even chosen seemed unfair, but he saw the seriousness in their faces, and he knew that refusal would not be an option later. When he walked outside the hall, Lyra beside him, he asked quietly, "Why did you do this?" Her gaze turned to him, calm and unwavering. "I saw what you carry," she said. "You stand strong when others step back. You watch when others rush. You think when others speak thoughtless words. I wanted that strength beside me." Her answer shook him more than he expected. He had always believed himself ordinary, Just another soldier fulfilling his duty, but to her he was something more, and the certainty in her voice left no space for doubt. Daniel looked at her in silence, struggling to shape his thoughts. Finally, he asked, "But what if I fail? What if I cannot live by your ways?" She placed a hand gently over his chest, where her scent had first marked him. Then she said, "You will not fail. Because you will learn, and I will stand with you." Following days brought tests of a different kind, rival males, watching him from shadows, throwing challenges not in words, but in the coldness of their stares. Merchants refusing him certain goods. Warriors laughing quietly when he passed, though none dared to confront him directly. He felt the rising tension with each step, and yet Lyra's presence steadied him. He began to see her not just as the one who had claimed him, but as someone who protected him fiercely, someone who believed in him more than he believed in himself. The humans saw the changes too. Marcus approached him late one night saying, "Daniel, you are not the same man anymore." Daniel sighed, because he knew it was true. "I do not feel the same," he admitted. Marcus shook his head with worry. "You are slipping into their world. If you go further, you may not come back." Daniel looked up at the alien sky where the twin moons floated like silver eyes, and he wondered if Marcus was right, or if maybe his place truly was shifting to something else. Something he had never imagined. One morning, the challenge came openly in the training grounds. A rival male stepped forward, tall and marked with stripes of color across his skin. He pointed at Daniel and declared loudly, "This bond is false. He is not worthy. Let him prove himself." The crowd gathered quickly, both humans and aliens drawn to the moment. Daniel's heart pounded. He had no training in their combat, no skill in their traditions, yet the eyes of everyone bore down on him. Lyra's gaze held his firmly, steady, strong. She gave a small nod as if telling him silently that he was capable. Trial was not of weapons, but of endurance. The rival moved swiftly, striking Daniel with sharp blows, testing his balance, his strength. Daniel staggered, but did not fall. Each time he rose again, he remembered Lyra's words, "You will learn," and he pushed himself harder, finding within him a stubborn core that refused to yield. He used his human agility, twisting, dodging, holding ground, even when pain shot through him. At last, the rival paused, breathing hard, the crowd silent, watching Daniel stand upright, battered but unbroken. The elder who had spoken before raised his voice. "Enough, he has endured. He carries the bond," the rival snarled, but did not press further. Instead, he turned and left. The crowd murmured, some in acceptance, some in surprise. Daniel stood trembling, sweat rolling down his face, but when Lyra stepped beside him, her hand lightly touching his shoulder, he felt the weight lift. The whispers changed tone from doubt to respect. That night, Daniel sat outside the quarters alone, staring at the glowing towers. He thought about how quickly everything had changed. He had come as a visitor, now he was tied to a people through a bond he had not sought. But he no longer felt only trapped. Part of him had begun to accept that maybe this was not a prison. Maybe it was a path opening before him, a path he would never have found otherwise. When Lyra came to sit beside him, she said quietly, "You did not fail." Daniel turned to her, and for the first time, he did not feel the need to question her choice. He only felt the steady truth of her presence, and the way his heart no longer resisted her closeness. The challenge in the training grounds had only been the beginning, because once Daniel endured that trial, the whispers grew even louder. Now they spoke not only of his bond, but also of his strength. Some said he had proven himself. Others said it was not enough, that one act could not secure a place among them. And so the pressure mounted each day, until Daniel felt as if every step he took was being weighed against the bond he had never asked for, but no longer wished to deny. The humans were uneasy with the change. They kept their distance, and Daniel could feel the invisible wall rising higher between him and his own kind. The commander spoke little, but Daniel saw disapproval in his eyes. Marcus tried to remind him of the mission, of the danger of losing himself. But Daniel had already begun to see the world through different eyes. He could not unsee the life flowing through the alien city. The way the towers breathed like living beings, the way their People moved in harmony with their surroundings. He'd begun to feel the rhythm of it, as if it had been waiting for him all along. Lyra stood at the center of it all, unwavering, her presence never faltering. She guided him through lessons of her people, teaching him the meaning of sense, how each fragrance spoke more than words, how emotions were carried on the air for those who could sense them. Daniel learned slowly, awkward at first, but gradually his awareness sharpened. He began to catch the subtle shifts of mood around him. He realized that when Lyra had first touched him, it had not been a careless choice. It had been a deliberate declaration, not only to him but to her entire world. One evening the elders summoned them again. Hall glowed with threads of living light, and the voices of the elders carried deep weight. The bond has been made, they said, and a test of endurance has been seen, but now comes the greater trial. The bond must be affirmed in the old way before all eyes. Daniel felt a shiver through his body. Though he did not yet understand what they meant, the elder continued, "Others will stand against you if they believe your bond is weak. You must show not only endurance, but unity." The words struck Daniel like thunder, because this meant confrontation not with one rival, but with many. It meant standing in the center of their world and proving himself beyond question. He left the hall in silence, but his mind stormed with doubts. He wondered if he was ready, if he could stand at all against their traditions. Lyra walked beside him, silent for a long time before finally saying, "You are afraid." Daniel looked at her and nodded. There was no point denying it. "Yes, I am afraid. I do not know if I can do what they ask." She stopped then and turned to him, her eyes burning with steady fire. "You can, because you are not alone. You carry strength, and I chose you for it. But you also carry something more. You carry a heart that does not break." Her words sank deep into him, and that night he slept little, his dreams filled with strange images of battles he did not understand and faces of people who judged him. When dawn came, the air in the city felt heavier than usual, as if everyone was holding their breath. The trial would take place in the central square, a vast open space where both humans and aliens gathered in thick crowds. Daniel walked with steady steps, though inside his chest thundered like drums. Lyra walked at his side, her presence a shield against the fear that threatened to swallow him. The trial began with a circle drawn in the dust, glowing faintly with living energy. Daniel stepped into it. With Lyra beside him, the elders announced that any who doubted the bond could step forward and test its truth. And they came one by one, challengers, not with weapons, but with trials of strength, of wit, of endurance. Some pushed him with questions meant to break his will. Others pressed him with tasks that tested his body. Each time Daniel stumbled, but each time he rose. Lyra never left his side, her hand steady, her eyes unwavering, her scent lingering near him like a constant reminder that he was not standing alone. At one point a challenger demanded that Daniel walk across a path of living roots that twisted and shifted like serpents, threatening to throw him down. He began to fall more than once, but Lyra's voice called to him, steady and clear, and he forced himself forward, step by step, until he reached the other side, sweat pouring down his skin, yet victory shining quietly in his stance. Another time a rival tried to provoke him into anger, hurling insults about his kind, about his weakness, but Daniel held his temper, remembering Lyra's lessons, that true strength was not in rage, but in balance, and the rival faltered before his calm. Hours passed. The trial seemed endless, yet Daniel refused to yield, his body aching, his mind burning, but his spirit unbroken. When at last the final challenger stepped away, defeated, the square erupted with voices, some cheering, some murmuring in shock. The elders raised their hands and declared the bond proven. The glow around the circle flared bright, then faded, leaving silence for a moment that felt eternal. Daniel stood breathing hard, every muscle sore, yet his heart strangely light. He turned to Lyra and saw something in her eyes he had not fully seen before, pride, but also warmth. Deeper than pride, she stepped close to him and without hesitation rubbed her cheek once more against his skin, leaving her scent rich and strong upon him this time. Daniel did not freeze, he did not resist, he accepted it, fully knowing what it meant. Knowing that the entire world now saw him as hers, and that he chose it willingly, the crowd bowed their heads not in mockery, but in respect. The humans looked on with disbelief, some shaking their heads, others silent, unable to deny what they had witnessed. Daniel felt the bond seal not as chains, but as a choice, a path he had stepped upon with open eyes, and he knew his life would never again belong only to Earth. It now belonged also to this world, and to her. The square slowly emptied after the trial, but the echo of voices lingered like a tide that would not fade. Daniel stood in the fading glow of the circle, his body heavy with exhaustion, yet his spirit lighter than it had ever been. He had expected to feel only relief, but instead there was something stronger, a sense of belonging that he had never known before. When the crowd drifted away, Lyra remained at his side, silent and steady, as always, her presence no longer a mystery, but a certainty. The humans gathered later in their quarters, and Daniel walked among them, feeling the distance like a wall. Marcus looked at him with mixed emotions, part worry, part admiration. The commander spoke firmly, saying, "You have gone further than any of us, Daniel. You are no longer only of us. You must know what this means." Daniel nodded. He knew the truth. He had crossed a line that could not be erased. He had been marked, challenged, tested, and now accepted the commander's side and added, "Whether we like it or not, you are a bridge between two peoples." Daniel spent the night outside on the terrace of the alien hall, watching the twin moons drift slowly across the violet sky. The sense of the city hung around him, faint traces of spice and earth, and always the sweeter fragrance that clung to him from Lyra. He thought back on the first moment when she had touched him, and how much had changed since then. He had resisted at first, frightened by the weight of it, but now he felt no fear, only a quiet strength that seemed to root itself deeper each day. In the days that followed, the aliens treated him differently, no longer with suspicion or mockery, but with respect. Children looked at him with wide eyes. Merchants offered him goods without hesitation. Warriors greeted him as one of their own, though sometimes with grudging nods. Daniel learned more of their ways, guided always by Lyra. He began to move with more confidence through their streets, speaking their phrases, understanding their gestures, and even sensing the faint shifts of scent that carried unspoken meanings. He was not perfect, but he was no longer a stranger. For the humans, the change was harder. Some still whispered uneasily, some avoided him altogether, but others began to see the potential of what had happened. They realized that Daniel had not been lost. He had become a symbol, a living connection between two very different worlds. Marcus one evening admitted quietly, "I still do not understand why she chose you, but I cannot deny what I saw. You stood in their circle, and they accepted you. Maybe that means more than we thought." Daniel only smiled faintly, because he was beginning to understand that it was not only her choice but also his own. The turning point came when the elders called another gathering, this time not for trial, but for declaration. The hall filled with both humans and aliens, the air heavy with expectation. The eldest among them spoke. "Daniel has endured, and Daniel has chosen. He is no longer visitor, he is no longer questioned. He is bondmate of Lyra, and through him bondmate to all who seek peace between our worlds." The words echoed through the chamber, and Daniel felt their weight, yet also their promise. Lyra stepped forward then, in front of everyone, her movements graceful, her face calm, but her eyes carrying warmth. She pressed her hand once more over his chest, where the mark had first been made, and she spoke for all to hear. "He is mine by my choice, and by his choice we are bound, not by force, but by strength and by heart." Daniel placed his hand over hers, and for the first time he answered, not with silence, but with words clear and steady. "I am hers, and I do not deny it." The hall filled with murmurs, then cheers, the sound rising like a wave that swept across both humans and aliens. It was not just acceptance of their bond, it was a moment of unity. Daniel felt the barrier between two people shift and soften in that single breath afterward, when the gathering ended and the night sky stretched wide and endless. Daniel and Lyra walked together through the glowing streets, their steps unhurried, their silence comfortable. Daniel thought of Earth, far away, and of how different his path had become. He thought of how strange it was that one touch had changed everything, yet he no longer wished it undone. He had found something here, more powerful than duty or fear. He had found a bond that made him stronger than he had believed possible. When Lyra looked at him and smiled faintly, he knew that whatever future awaited him, he would not face it alone. The days rolled into weeks, and Daniel's place among them grew firmer. He helped the humans and aliens communicate. He stood in councils as a voice of both sides. He trained with the warriors. He listened to the elders. He lived between two worlds, but no longer as an outsider. The scent that clung to him had once felt like chains. Now it felt like a banner carried high for all to see. Wherever he walked, whispers no longer spoke of doubt. They spoke of respect. They spoke of belonging. And when the night grew quiet and the city settled into calm, Daniel sometimes remembered the first shock of that day when she had pressed her cheek to his skin and left her mark. He remembered the fear, the confusion, the disbelief, and he smiled because all of it had led to this, to a bond that had been tested and proven, to a future not chosen by chance but by courage. Daniel had come as a stranger. He had been claimed as if against his will, but in the end he had chosen to stay, chosen to stand, chosen to belong. And that choice was stronger than any scent, stronger than any trial. It was the choice that made him truly one of them. The end.